They siphoned almost 300,000 gallons out of my well, and I shut down an entire golf course in 11 minutes flat. That still sounds dramatic when I say it out loud, like something you'd hear in a movie trailer, but I'm not a dramatic guy. I'm 70 now, retired, knees a little stiff in the morning, and for most of my life, I was the kind of civil engineer who argued about soil density and drainage slopes for fun. I don't raise my voice much. I don't look for fights. But I do know how water systems work. My name's Mark Halpern. Back in 2001, I bought 5 acres just outside of Mesa, Arizona. Not the fancy part. The dusty, quiet stretch where the sky feels bigger than your problems, and you can still see stars at night. I paid cash after 30 years working municipal projects, saving every bonus check, skipping the fancy vacations my wife Linda kept gently suggesting. That land was my retirement plan. First thing I did was drill a private well, 360 feet down. Cost me just under 30 grand, which at the time felt insane, but I wanted independence. Out there, you either bring your own water or you beg for it. I chose the first option. I still remember the sound of that drill biting into the earth, steady and patient. When the water finally surged up clear and cold, I felt like I'd struck gold. I filed the state permit, logged every detail, installed my own monitoring system because, well, I'm that kind of guy. If something runs under my land, I know about it. For nearly 20 years, that well did exactly what it was supposed to do. Fed our small orchard, kept the mesquite trees alive, supplied the house. My electric bill for the pump hovered around $120, $130 a month, predictable as sunrise. Life was simple. Then the developers showed up. Around 2018, the old cattle land bordering mine sold to a company called High Crest Development. They brought in glossy renderings and drone footage, talking about sustainable desert living, eco-conscious luxury, panoramic fairways blending into the natural terrain. They named it Red Horizon Estates. 18-hole championship golf course. Custom homes starting at 800 grand. I'll admit, part of me was impressed. Another part of me knew exactly how much water a golf course gulps down in the middle of an Arizona summer. At the first community meeting, a sharply dressed guy named Bradley Knox introduced himself as the property operations director. Firm handshake, bright smile. He said, "We're excited to be your neighbors, Mr. Halpern. We believe in partnership." I nodded. Said, "Water's tight out here. Hope you've planned for that." He smiled a little wider. "Oh, absolutely. We've secured all required resources." That phrase stuck with me. Required resources. Construction lasted about a year. Bulldozers at dawn, concrete trucks at noon, landscapers planting imported turf that had no business living in the desert. Linda hated the noise, but I told her progress always sounds loud before it looks pretty. By spring of 2019, the course was open. Perfect green fairways wrapped around my fence line like a velvet ribbon. From my back porch, I could see golfers teeing off where coyotes used to run. It was strange, but not unwelcome. Property values climbed. The road got paved. We even got better internet service. For about 6 months, everything felt fine. Then my electric bill jumped. I remember holding it at the kitchen table, squinting at the number like maybe I'd misread it. $812. Linda looked over my shoulder. That can't be right. I thought the same. Maybe the pump was aging. Maybe a pressure switch failed. I drove out to the well house with my toolbox, checked the amperage draw, listened to the motor. It sounded normal. Smooth. No grinding. Next month, the bill hit $904. Now I wasn't confused. I was concerned. Pumps don't just quadruple their energy use unless they're working harder. And they only work harder if something is pulling more water. I pulled my old logbooks from the cabinet in my office. Yes, I keep logbooks. 20 years of handwritten flow rates, maintenance notes, water levels. When you spend your career designing infrastructure, you develop habits. The numbers didn't lie. My pump cycles had nearly doubled. Something was drawing water consistently, especially overnight. Linda asked the question I was already thinking. Could the course be tapping into the aquifer and lowering your water table? Possible, I said, but that wouldn't explain the flow spike from my pump. So I installed a digital flow meter in line with my system. It cost me a weekend and a few scraped knuckles, but once it was running, I could see exactly how many gallons moved through my pipes each hour. The data was clear within 48 hours. My well was feeding more than my house and orchard combined. Way more. That's when I started walking the perimeter. Slowly, methodically, following every visible pipe, every junction box. Most of my lines run underground, but there's a main access trench along the east fence, covered with gravel. One morning, just after sunrise, when the sprinklers on the golf course were still hissing in the cool air, I noticed something different. The gravel near my fence looked disturbed, like it had been raked back into place. I crouched down, brushed it aside with my hand, and there it was. A clean splice. 2-inch PVC line tied directly into my supply pipe. Professionally done. Pressure sealed. No rust, no debris. Fresh work. For a second, I just stared at it. My brain didn't want to process what my eyes were seeing. Then it hit me. They hadn't just lowered the water table. They hadn't just competed for resources. They had connected to my well. I sat back on my heels, the desert sun climbing behind me, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not yet. Violation. Somebody had crossed my fence line, dug into my system, and decided my water was theirs. And that was only the beginning. I didn't march over there yelling. That's not my style. I covered the splice back up, walked inside, and poured myself a cup of coffee I didn't really want. Linda could tell something was off just by the way I set the mug down. What happened? She asked. They're in our line, I said. She frowned. What do you mean, in our line? I mean they tied into the well. Clean splice. 2-inch feed. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. She went quiet. Linda's not dramatic either. She taught second grade for 30 years. When she goes quiet, it means she's thinking 5 steps ahead. Are you sure? I'm sure. And here's the thing people don't understand unless they've built something from scratch. That well wasn't just infrastructure to me. It was security. It was the reason we could live out there without depending on a utility company or an HOA board. It was mine because I'd earned it, paid for it, permitted it, maintained it. So I didn't call Bradley Knox right away. I did what engineers do. I gathered data. I pulled the last 6 months of pump logs, matched them against the flow meter readings, calculated the additional volume. It took me most of the afternoon, legal pad covered in numbers, pencil tapping against the desk. By sunset, I had a figure that made my stomach turn. 287,000 gallons. That's not a rounding error. That's not a sprinkler leak. That's commercial irrigation volume. I drove into town the next morning and sat in the parking lot of a water rights attorney I'd heard about years ago, a woman named Carla Mendez. Small office, no flashy sign, just her name on the door. When I laid everything out on her conference table, permit from 2001, photos of the splice, flow data, she leaned back in her chair and let out a low whistle. They didn't even try to hide it, she said. No, you have exclusive rights to that well under state permit. No shared easement. No cooperative agreement. This is unauthorized diversion. So what does that mean? I asked. She smiled, just a little. It means they're in trouble if you want them to be. I'm not a sue first kind of guy. Court drags on. Lawyers get rich. Neighbors get ugly. But I also wasn't going to let a corporation treat me like background scenery. What are my options? You can demand payment for past usage. You can pursue damages. Or, she paused, you can shut them off. I thought about that for a long moment. Would that be legal? If the connection is on your property and unauthorized, absolutely. It's your line. That's when the idea started forming. Not revenge. Correction. I drove home and ordered an industrial-grade lockable gate valve. $1,200. Solid steel housing. Tamper-resistant. If someone wanted to access that line again, they'd need more than a shovel and good intentions. I also installed 2 security cameras facing the well house and the fence trench, motion-activated, cloud storage. While I was at it, I printed a sign in big block letters. Private well. Unauthorized access will be prosecuted. I mounted it where nobody could miss it. Then I waited. For 3 days I watched the flow meter. Every night around 1 a.m., the usage spiked. The golf course irrigation cycle. My pump would kick on and run steady for nearly 2 hours. I could almost picture the fairways soaking up water that wasn't theirs. Linda asked me, when are you going to do it? Tuesday, I said. Morning tea times start at 8. Sprinklers shut off by 9. She studied my face. You're calm. I am. But underneath that calm was something steady and sharp. Not rage. Not panic. Just resolve. Tuesday morning, 9:14 a.m., I walked out to the well house with the new valve wrench in my hand. The desert was already warming up, air shimmering over the fairways beyond my fence. A few golfers were lining up putts in the distance, blissfully unaware. I checked the camera feed one last time. No one around. At 9:15, I turned the valve. It wasn't dramatic. No explosion. No alarm. Just the solid mechanical resistance of steel closing over water flow. I locked it, pocketed the key, and stood there for a second listening to the silence. 9 minutes later, my phone rang. Bradley Knox. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:32, it rang again. At 9:40, again. By 10:05, I had 4 voicemails, each a little less polished than the last. Mark, we're experiencing some irregular pressure issues. If you could give me a call. Then, we need to discuss a possible service interruption. The 4th one dropped the corporate tone entirely. Did you shut off the line? At 11:20, a number I didn't recognize called. I let that one go too. A voicemail followed. Mr. Halpern, this is Thomas Reed representing Red Horizon Estates. We believe there may be a misunderstanding regarding shared utility infrastructure. Shared utility infrastructure. That almost made me laugh. Instead of calling anyone back, I drafted a single email. Attached my well permit. Attached dated photographs of the splice. Attached a spreadsheet detailing 287,000 gallons at prevailing commercial irrigation rates. Total due, $6,430. At the bottom I wrote, all future communication may be directed to my attorney, Carla Mendez. Her contact information is below. I hit send at 11:47 a.m. The next 48 hours were interesting. Board members called. One tried intimidation. You're interfering with essential operations. We can seek damages for lost revenue. I replied calmly. You tapped a private well without authorization. I have documentation. Silence on the other end. By day 2, patches of turf on the outer fairways started to dull from bright emerald to tired olive. Golf courses are like celebrities. They need constant upkeep to maintain the illusion. Linda and I sat on our back porch that evening watching sprinklers sputter weakly on the far side of the property. Do you feel bad? She asked. I thought about it. There were groundskeepers out there, regular folks just doing their jobs. I didn't want anyone losing employment over this. But then I pictured that splice again, buried under my gravel like I'd never notice. No, I said finally. I feel clear. Day 3, 6 fairways showed brown streaks. Homeowners started posting on the community forum about declining course conditions. Someone blamed drought restrictions. Someone else mentioned infrastructure issues. Nobody mentioned theft. Not yet. On day 5, the local paper ran a small piece. Irrigation disruption at Red Horizon raises questions. They didn't have details, but rumors travel fast in upscale neighborhoods. Bradley showed up at my gate that afternoon. No smile this time. No firm handshake. Just a man sweating through a pressed shirt. Mark, he said, gripping the fence rail. We need to resolve this. I walked up slowly. Resolve what? You know what? I know you connected to my well without permission. It was temporary, he snapped. Our municipal allocation got delayed. We had to protect the turf investment. At my expense. He hesitated. We intended to formalize an agreement. You intended to ask later. He didn't deny it. Behind him, beyond the pristine clubhouse, I could see the first patches of dead grass turning brittle under the sun. Arizona doesn't forgive missed watering cycles. He lowered his voice. This is hurting property values. That right there, that was the real fear. Not legality. Not ethics. Property values. Then you should have planned better, I said. He rubbed his forehead. What do you want? That question hung between us in the dry air. And I already knew the answer. When Bradley asked me what I wanted, I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, I did, but because I wanted him to sit in that question for a second. Out there in the heat, with his perfect fairways fading behind him, I wanted him to feel what it's like when control slips just a little. I want it in writing, I said finally. In writing? A formal lease. 10 years. Commercial rate. Automatic payment. Late penalties. Water testing covered by you. Liability policy with my name on it. His jaw tightened. That's excessive. No, I said calmly. What you did was excessive. He tried a different angle. We can cut you a check today. $18,000 for past usage. We'll call it even. I almost smiled. You don't get to call it even. Here's what people misunderstand about moments like that. It's not about squeezing someone. It's about resetting balance. For 6 months, they treated my well like a quiet backup system they could lean on whenever their planning fell short. No call. No knock on the door. Just a shovel and a splice. I wasn't going to let the resolution be just as casual. You're losing turf by the hour. I added, nodding toward the course. Every day that valve stays closed costs you more than my terms will. He exhaled slowly. The corporate polish was cracking. Send me the numbers. I already did. That night I sat at my desk and drafted a proposal with Carla's help. We kept it clean and professional. 10-year water access agreement. $2,100 per month. Payment due on the 1st. 5-day grace period. After that, I shut the valve and a $1,500 reconnection fee applies. Quarterly water quality testing at their expense. $50,000 liability policy listing me as additional insured. Contract recorded with the county. No handshakes. No verbal promises. Paper. They signed it on day 11. Bradley came alone this time, no lawyer. He looked tired, sunburned, like a man who'd spent the week explaining to investors why half their fairways were turning to straw. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Linda and I drink coffee every morning. He flipped through the pages slowly. You realize, he said, not looking up, this sets a precedent. I shrugged. So does theft. He signed. And just like that, the power dynamic shifted. The first automatic payment hit my account exactly at 12:03 a.m. on the 1st of the following month. I didn't even have to check. My bank sent a notification. Still, I checked. Old habits. I walked out to the well house later that morning and unlocked the valve. Turned it open slowly. Water flowed again, steady and obedient. Not stolen. Rented. Within days, irrigation crews worked around the clock trying to revive what they'd lost. Some sections came back. Others had to be resodded entirely. Word had already spread through the homeowners association about what happened. The local paper eventually ran a more detailed story about unauthorized water diversion. They didn't name me at first, but everyone nearby knew. Reactions were mixed. A couple of residents drove by and waved. One even stopped and said, "Good for you. They've been pushing everyone around since they broke ground." Others weren't so friendly. I got a letter slipped into my mailbox accusing me of sabotaging the community. Someone wrote that I should have handled it privately instead of embarrassing the development. That one made me laugh. They had handled it privately, 6 months of it. Property values dipped for a bit, about 10 or 12% according to a real estate agent who lives 2 roads over. The board quietly replaced Bradley as operations director by the end of the year. Officially, it was organizational restructuring. Unofficially, investors don't like surprises that show up in newspapers. But here's the part that surprised me. Life didn't explode into some victory parade. There was no dramatic music swelling in the background. Just the same desert mornings, the same coffee on the porch, the same coyotes howling in the distance. The only difference was certainty. Every month, that payment arrives. Like clockwork. I never have to call. I never have to remind them. And I've never had to touch that valve again. Not once. Sometimes I'll see golfers pause near the fence line, maybe wondering why there's a small industrial valve housing tucked behind a locked gate with cameras pointed at it. They don't know the story. To them, it's just part of the infrastructure that keeps their oasis green. To me, it's a reminder. A reminder that quiet people aren't weak. That preparation matters. That documentation beats outrage. Linda asked me a few months after everything settled, "Do you think you changed?" I thought about that for a long time. Before this happened, I probably would have assumed the best and let it slide longer than I should. I've always believed most conflicts come from misunderstanding. But this wasn't misunderstanding. This was calculation. They looked at an older couple on 5 acres and figured we wouldn't notice, or wouldn't fight, or wouldn't have the energy. They miscalculated. Not because I'm tougher than the next guy, but because I know my systems. I built them. I respect them. And I expect others to do the same. There's a deeper tension out here in the desert that people don't talk about much. Water is survival. It's power. Developments roll in with capital and ambition, and sometimes they assume the land will bend to their timeline. But land doesn't care about marketing brochures. Walls don't care about investor calls. Physics doesn't negotiate. You either secure your resources properly, or you face the consequences. Now, do I feel bad about the fairways that died? Sometimes, maybe a little. I don't enjoy watching things wither. But I also think about the alternative. If I'd said nothing, if I'd let that splice stay buried, they would have kept pulling. Quietly. Indefinitely. And one day my pump might have burned out. Or my aquifer level might have dropped enough to threaten my own supply. Then what? There's this idea floating around that being neighborly means absorbing harm to keep the peace. I don't buy that anymore. Being neighborly means respecting boundaries. And when someone crosses them, you address it firmly, fairly, and with paperwork. Every now and then, someone will ask me at the hardware store, "Hey, are you the well guy?" I'll nod. They'll grin and say, "Never seen a golf course beg for water before." Neither had I. But here's the part one still wrestle with. Was shutting them off the only way? Should I have knocked on Bradley's door first, given him a chance to confess? Would he have admitted it if I hadn't had photos and flow data? Or would he have kept smiling and talking about shared infrastructure? I don't know. What I do know is this. The moment I turned that valve, I wasn't acting out of spite. I was restoring balance. And sometimes balance doesn't come from negotiation. It comes from leverage. So I'll leave you with this. If you found a corporation quietly using your property without permission, would you shut them down immediately, or would you try to work it out first? Where's the line between being reasonable and being taken advantage of? I'm genuinely curious how you see it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if you think I went too far or not far enough. Share your own story if you've ever had to stand your ground against someone bigger than you. Because out here in the desert, water isn't just water. And sometimes the quietest guy on the block is the one holding the valve.